Princess Zaratil stood before the massive crystal windows of the royal palace, her 6 arms crossed in defiance as she gazed out at the twin suns setting over the capital city of Velnara. Her blue skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with her anger, creating swirling galaxies of light across her tall, elegant form. Behind her, Queen Mother Wysindra watched with ancient patience, her own patterns glowing as steady, calming gold. "Mother, you cannot be serious about this arrangement," Zaratil said, her voice carrying the melodic undertones that marked her as royalty among the Velnari people. "A human? They are barely out of their primitive caves. They have only 2 arms, no natural armor, and they live for less time than it takes our flowers to bloom." The Queen Mother's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "My daughter, you speak of things you do not understand. The humans may appear simple, but there is more to them than meets the eye. This alliance is not just political necessity, it is survival." Zaratil turned from the window, her 4 eyes flashing with indignation. "Survival? Mother, our empire spans 300 star systems. Our technology allows us to reshape planets and command the very forces of nature. What could these bipedal creatures possibly offer us?" The Queen Mother moved to an ornate chair carved from a single massive gemstone, her movements fluid and graceful despite her advanced age. "Sit, my child, and I will tell you a story that may change your perspective." Reluctantly, Zaratil settled onto a cushioned platform, her 6 arms folding in her lap as she waited. "500 cycles ago," the Queen Mother began, "our scouts first encountered humanity during their primitive wars. They were fighting each other with crude metal weapons, dying in vast numbers over patches of dirt on their single world. Our observers dismissed them as another species destined for self-destruction. We had seen countless civilizations follow the same path." The Queen Mother's patterns shifted to a deep purple of remembrance. But something curious happened. Instead of destroying themselves, they began to change. Within mere decades, they went from throwing rocks to splitting atoms. In a single lifetime, they went from walking to flying between stars. This caught our attention. Zaratil shifted impatiently. Yes, they develop quickly. Many species do when they discover certain technologies. It proves nothing. Patience, daughter. The story grows more interesting. The Queen Mother's eyes took on a distant look. "Our first official contact was meant to be a simple trade negotiation. We approached them as we do all younger species, with overwhelming displays of our technological superiority. We expected them to bow and accept whatever terms we offered." A smile played across the Queen Mother's features. "The human representative, a woman named Sarah Chun, listened to our demands politely. Then she stood up, looked our ambassador directly in the eye, and said, 'No.' Zaratil blinked in confusion. "Simply no. Not we need time to consider, or perhaps different terms. Just no." When our ambassador asked why, she explained that the terms were unfair and that humanity would rather remain independent than accept what amounted to vassalage. The Queen Mother rose and moved to a wall covered in star charts. Our ambassador was so shocked that he made a threat. He told her that our battle fleets could turn their world to glass within days. Do you know what she said to that? Zaratil shook her head, now genuinely curious despite herself. She said, "Then you'd better hope you get all of us, because the ones you miss will spend their entire lives figuring out how to return the favor." Then she walked out of the negotiation. The princess felt a small chill run through her patterns. What happened next? Our ambassador was furious. He recommended immediate military action to teach these upstart humans their place. The High Council agreed. Within a month, a full battle fleet was dispatched to their system. Queen Mother Wysindra traced one of the star charts with a slender finger. The fleet arrived to find Earth surrounded by a network of defense platforms that hadn't existed during the negotiations. Somehow, in just 30 days, humanity had managed to construct orbital fortifications using principles our own engineers said were impossible with their technology level. Impossible, Zaratil protested. No species develops that quickly. That's what we thought. Our fleet commander demanded surrender. The human response was to broadcast a message that became legendary throughout our empire. A grizzled, old human general appeared on every screen and said, "You came to our home uninvited. You threatened our families. Big mistake." The Queen Mother's patterns flickered with what might have been admiration. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, humanity had lost half their defense network and 17 million people. We had lost an entire battle fleet, every ship, every crew member. The humans had somehow turned their primitive missiles into weapons that could penetrate our shields and armor. Zaratiel's patterns had shifted to pale white with shock. How was that possible? That's what our military wanted to know. They prepared an even larger fleet, but before it could launch, something unprecedented happened. Other species began offering humanity protection. The crystalline Hartova, the warrior clans of Maztok, even the enigmatic shadows of Kepler Prime, all offered to stand with humanity against us. But why would they do that? Zaratiel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because in those 6 hours, humanity had done something that countless species had dreamed of for millennia. They had bloodied the nose of the mighty Velnari Empire. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. If these strange bipeds could destroy one of our battle fleets, perhaps the Empire wasn't as invincible as everyone believed. The Queen Mother returned to her chair, her patterns now showing deep contemplation. We suddenly faced the possibility of a galaxy-wide alliance against us. The High Council was forced to reconsider. They opened new negotiations with humanity, this time as equals rather than inferiors. And they agreed to talk after destroying our fleet. Zaratiel's patterns showed confusion mixed with a grudging respect. Not only did they agree to talk, but the same Sarah Chun returned as their representative. When asked why they were willing to negotiate after proving they could fight us, she said something that changed how our entire empire views warfare. The Queen Mother paused, letting the suspense build. She said, "Fighting is what you do when talking fails. We'd rather talk." Zaratiel sat in stunned silence for several moments. Finally, she found her voice. "So this marriage alliance, it's to prevent war? It's to prevent the collapse of our empire, daughter." Over the past centuries since that first contact, humanity has become the center of a vast network of alliances. Species that once feared us now see humans as protectors. Our influence wanes while theirs grows, not through conquest, but through something they call friendship. The princess stood and began pacing, her 6 arms gesturing as she processed this information. But surely our military could still defeat them. We have learned from that first battle. Have we? 3 months ago, the Kythera Consortium declared war on humanity over mining rights in the Centauri Nebula. The Kythera had ships that could match our own, armies that had conquered 12 star systems. They expected an easy victory against what they called the soft humans. Queen Mother Wysesandra called up a holographic display showing a star map. The war lasted 18 days. The Kythera Consortium no longer exists as a political entity. Their worlds have been liberated, their people freed, and their leaders are being tried for crimes against sentient beings by something humanity calls an international court. 18 days. Zaratiel's patterns flickered between disbelief and fear. Humanity didn't just defeat them. They convinced the Kythera's own people to revolt. Apparently, humans have a concept called propaganda that they've elevated to an art form. By day 10 of the war, Kythera's citizens were demanding their government surrender. The Queen Mother gestured to another section of the star map. But the most telling detail was how the war ended. When the Kythera leadership finally surrendered, they expected to be executed or enslaved according to standard galactic practice. Instead, humanity offered them rehabilitation programs, rebuilt their damaged worlds, and helped establish a democratic government. They helped their enemies? Zaratiel's voice cracked slightly. They turned their enemies into allies. Within 6 months, former Kythera military officers were serving alongside human forces to protect other worlds from threats. It's a pattern they repeat everywhere they go. The princess sank back onto her cushioned platform, her patterns now a swirling mix of confusion and awe. I don't understand. How does showing mercy make them strong? Because, my daughter, they understand something that we never learned in our millennia of conquest. Fear may create temporary submission, but loyalty freely given is infinitely more powerful. Every species humanity has helped now stands ready to defend them. They have built an empire not of subjects, but of friends. Queen Mother Weiss understood and moved to another window, this one facing the palace landing platforms where sleek spacecraft came and went in the eternal dance of interstellar commerce. Our intelligence networks report that humanity's alliance now includes over 40 species across 200 star systems. Not conquered territories, not vassal states, but willing partners who contribute their unique strengths to a common cause. And you believe that allying with them through marriage will save our empire? Zaratil asked, her patterns now showing the deep blue of careful thought. I believe it may be our only chance for survival. The galaxy is changing, daughter. The age of conquest and domination is ending. Humanity represents something new, a way to build power through cooperation rather than force. We can either adapt to this new reality or be swept aside by it. The Queen Mother turned back to face her daughter. The human you are to marry is named Marcus Chun. Yes, a descendant of the same Sarah Chun who first defied our empire. He is 28 years old in human terms, a diplomat and scholar who has spent his life studying our culture and language. Has he agreed to this arrangement? Zaratil found herself asking, surprised by her own curiosity. Surprisingly, yes. When approached by his government, he volunteered immediately. His only request was for time to learn more about our customs so that he could honor them properly during the ceremony. Zaratil's patterns shifted to a soft pink of confusion. He volunteered, but surely this marriage offers him no advantage. I am alien to his kind. Our lifespans are different. Our customs are completely foreign to him. Perhaps, the Queen Mother said gently, that tells you something about the character of the man you will marry. He sees this union not as a burden, but as an opportunity to build bridges between our peoples. The princess rose and returned to the crystal windows, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Among them, barely visible, was the yellow star that warmed the human homeworld of Earth. When will he arrive? His diplomatic vessel enters our system tomorrow. The formal introduction will take place in 3 days, followed by a week of cultural exchange before the ceremony. Cultural exchange? Zaratil turned, one eyebrow raised in curiosity. His idea. He wishes to learn our ways, and he has requested permission to share some human customs with our court. He seems particularly excited about something he calls music and another thing called cooking. Despite herself, Zaratil felt a small spark of interest. She had heard fragments of human music during intelligence briefings, strange rhythmic sounds that somehow seemed to speak directly to emotions in ways that traditional Velnari harmonics could not match. Mother, what do you truly think of this human I am to marry? Queen Mother Wisindra was quiet for a long moment, her patterns shifting through several colors before settling on the warm gold of honesty. I think, my daughter, that you may discover there is more to humanity than anyone in our empire has yet realized. And I think that this marriage, which begins as political necessity, may become something far more valuable, such as love, perhaps, or at least understanding. And in these changing times, understanding may be the most powerful force in the galaxy. That night, Zaratil lay in her chamber pod, the bioluminescent patterns across her skin dim with exhaustion, but her mind racing. Through her ceiling window, she could see the stars of the galactic core, many of them now allied with or protected by humanity. The thought both terrified and fascinated her. She had been raised to believe in the natural superiority of the Velnari, taught that their empire was built on strength and intelligence that no other species could match. Now, she faced the possibility that all of those beliefs might be wrong. What kind of people could turn enemies into friends? What kind of man would volunteer to marry an alien princess for the sake of peace between their worlds? And what would it mean for her own future to be bound to such a person? As sleep finally claimed her, Zaratiel's dreams were filled with images of two-armed beings who fought with incomprehensible ferocity when threatened, but offered mercy to those who surrendered. She saw cities of glass and metal rising from the surfaces of distant worlds, built not by conquest, but by cooperation between species that had once been strangers. And in her dreams, she saw a face, human, with the strange bilateral symmetry that marked their kind, but with eyes that held depths of intelligence and compassion that seemed to stretch beyond the boundaries of any single world or people. Tomorrow, that face would become real. Tomorrow, she would meet Marcus Chun and begin to discover whether the future her mother envisioned was possible or whether some divisions were simply too vast to bridge. The twin sons of Velnara rose on a day that would change not just two lives, but the fate of empires. Marcus Chun stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge, watching the alien world of Velnara grow larger as they approached. The planet was unlike anything in human space. Two massive continents floating on seas of liquid crystal, connected by bridges of what appeared to be living coral that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Cities of organic architecture spiraled up from the surface like frozen music, their bioluminescent surfaces pulsing with patterns that he was only beginning to understand. First time seeing a Velnari homeworld, asked Ambassador Sarah Chun, his great-grandmother, as she joined him at the viewport. At 93, she moved with the careful precision of someone who had lived through history and helped shape it. It's beautiful, Marcus admitted, his breath fogging the transparent aluminum of the viewport. And terrifying. In a few days, I'll be married to someone from this world. Someone who probably sees me as a primitive alien. Sarah laughed, the sound carrying decades of diplomatic experience. I remember feeling the same way during my first contact with the Velnari. They seemed so advanced, so sophisticated. It took me years to realize that advancement and wisdom aren't the same thing. Marcus turned to study his great-grandmother's weathered face. Do you really think this marriage can work? Not just politically, but personally? That depends entirely on you and the princess. But I'll tell you something that might help. The Velnari are more like us than they want to admit. They feel fear, hope, love, and anger just like we do. They've just been trained to hide those emotions behind their pretty light shows. The ship shuddered slightly as they entered Velnara's atmosphere. Through the viewport, Marcus could see escort vessels flanking them. Graceful ships that looked more like living creatures than mechanical constructs, their surfaces rippling with colors that he was beginning to recognize as a form of communication. Marcus, Sarah said quietly, there's something I need to tell you before we land. Something that's not in the official briefings. He turned his full attention to her, noting the serious tone in her voice. The Velnari aren't just offering this marriage alliance because they want peace with us. They're offering it because they're afraid of us. Afraid? Marcus blinked in surprise. But they're one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in many areas. Technology isn't everything, Sarah replied, watching the alien cityscape grow clearer below them. Do you know what really happened during our first war with them? The official histories say we managed to destroy one of their fleets through superior tactics and determination. Sarah's smile was grim. The official histories are propaganda, son. Useful propaganda, but still propaganda. The truth is more complicated. She gestured for him to follow her to a secure briefing room. Inside, she activated a privacy shield and called up a holographic display showing tactical readouts from the battle over Earth. We didn't win that battle through superior tactics, she said quietly. We won it through sheer, desperate innovation and a complete willingness to sacrifice everything for our survival. When their fleet arrived, our best military minds calculated that we had perhaps a 5% chance of victory. The hologram showed the deployment of Earth's hastily constructed defense network. Those orbital platforms weren't technological marvels. They were suicide bombs operated by volunteers. Every platform was designed to ram enemy ships if conventional weapons failed. Marcus stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. But the report said what they needed to say to maintain morale and negotiate from a position of strength, Sarah interrupted. But the Velnari military analysts who survived that battle filed their own reports. They were horrified, not just by our willingness to die, but by how quickly we adapted their own technology against them. She manipulated the display, showing captured weapon fragments. Within hours of the first engagement, our engineers were analyzing wreckage and figuring out how to modify our weapons to penetrate their shields. By the battle's end, we were using principles that their scientists said should have taken us decades to discover. How is that possible? Because, Marcus, we're very good at learning from our enemies. And we're even better at finding ways to kill things that are trying to kill us. The Velnari have fought many wars, but they've always fought according to established rules and conventions. We threw out the rule book and fought to survive by any means necessary. The privacy shield deactivated as they received landing clearance. Sarah stood and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. The reason I'm telling you this is because Princess Zaratil probably knows the real story too. She's going into this marriage believing that she's allying with a species that's inherently dangerous and unpredictable. Your job is to show her that there's more to us than our capacity for violence. An hour later, Marcus stood in the palace's central courtyard, wearing formal diplomatic attire that had been specially designed to honor both human and Velnari customs. The fabric was earth silk woven with threads that responded to electromagnetic fields, creating subtle patterns that mimicked the Velnari's natural bioluminescence. The courtyard itself was a marvel of living architecture. The walls were composed of what appeared to be enormous flowering vines, their blooms shifting colors in response to the emotional states of those present. The floor was a mosaic of precious stones that somehow remained perfectly smooth despite their complex patterns. His Excellence, Marcus Chun of Earth, representing humanity in the bonds of diplomatic unity, announced a Velnari court herald, their voice carrying harmonic overtones that made the words seem to hang in the air. From across the courtyard, a procession approached. Marcus had seen recordings of Velnari royalty before, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of Princess Zaratil's presence. She moved with fluid grace on legs that seemed impossibly long, her 6 arms positioned in what he recognized as a formal greeting posture. Her blue skin was covered in patterns of light that shifted and flowed like liquid starlight, and her 4 eyes regarded him with an intelligence that was both alien and unmistakably sharp. She was, Marcus realized, absolutely magnificent and absolutely terrifying. "Your Highness," he said, executing the formal bow that he had practiced for weeks. The movement felt awkward compared to her natural grace, but he held the position for exactly the prescribed duration. "Marcus Chun of humanity," she replied, her voice carrying those musical overtones that marked Velnari nobility. "You honor us with your presence in our ancestral home." The formal words were necessary, but Marcus could see something else in her eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, mixed with what might have been nervousness. She was as uncertain about this meeting as he was. "The honor is entirely mine, Your Highness. Your world is more beautiful than any description could convey." They stood for a moment in the awkward silence that seemed to plague first meetings between species. Then, Princess Zaratil did something unexpected. She smiled. The expression was alien, involving muscles that humans didn't possess, but the meaning was unmistakable. "Perhaps we might walk together," she suggested. "I find that formal presentations often hide more than they reveal." As they moved through the palace gardens, Marcus found himself genuinely amazed by the alien environment. Plants that seemed to be part animal swayed to follow their movement, and flowers sang in harmonies that resonated in his bones. Water flowed upward in spiraling streams, defying gravity through principles he couldn't begin to understand. "You seem surprised by our gardens," Zaratil observed, her patterns shifting to what he thought might be amusement. "Everything here is alive in ways I never expected," he admitted. "On Earth, we have gardens too, but they're simpler, less interactive." "I would like to see these Earth gardens someday," she said, and Marcus caught something wistful in her tone. "I have studied your world through our intelligence reports, but they focus mainly on military capabilities and political structures. They say little about beauty." "Our intelligence reports probably do the same thing," Marcus replied. "They describe your empire's power and technology, but they never mention that your cities sing at sunset or that your flowers can harmonize with each other." They paused beside a fountain where water danced in complex patterns while rainbow-colored fish swam through the air as if it were liquid. Princess Zaratil extended one of her arms toward the display, and the fish swirled around her fingers in greeting. "Marcus Chun," she said, not looking at him directly, "may I ask you something that may seem impertinent?" "Of course, Your Highness. Why did you volunteer for this marriage? Surely your government could have chosen someone more suitable, someone with higher rank or greater diplomatic experience." Marcus considered his answer carefully. He could give her the political response about the importance of the alliance and his duty to his species. Instead, he chose honesty. "Because I was curious about you," he said simply. Her patterns flickered in what he was beginning to recognize as surprise. "Curious? Our peoples have been watching each other for decades, but we've never really tried to understand each other. We know how to fight each other and how to negotiate with each other, but we've never learned how to be friends. I wanted to see if that was possible. And if it's not possible, if we are simply too different to truly connect." Marcus looked around at the impossible beauty of the alien garden, then back at the princess whose patterns were now showing what looked like genuine interest rather than diplomatic politeness. "Then, at least we'll have tried something that's never been attempted before. And maybe that attempt will teach both our peoples something valuable about each other." They walked in comfortable silence for several minutes, the alien equivalent of birds calling to each other in the canopy above them. Finally, Princess Zaratil spoke again. "Your great-grandmother is Sarah Chun, the one who first defied our empire." "Yes, she's formidable. Our historians call her the human who said no. They study her tactics in our military academies." The princess glanced at him with what might have been amusement. "Some of our generals consider her one of the most dangerous individuals who has ever lived." Marcus laughed, genuinely surprised. "Dangerous? She makes the best apple pie in human space and teaches children to read in her spare time. She's a grandmother, not a warrior." "Perhaps," Zaratil replied. "That is what makes her so dangerous." They emerged from the gardens onto a balcony that overlooked the capital city. Below them, millions of Velnari went about their daily lives, their movements creating flowing patterns of light that painted the streets in constantly shifting colors. In the distance, Marcus could see spacecraft rising and descending from the orbital platforms, many of them bearing the insignia of dozens of different species. "Your great-grandmother changed our empire," the princess said quietly. "Before humanity, we ruled through strength and fear. Our subjects obeyed because they had no choice. But now they have an alternative. If they are unhappy with our rule, they can appeal to humanity for protection. And humanity has never refused such an appeal." Marcus turned to study her profile as she gazed out over her domain. "Does that bother you? Having your authority challenged?" "It terrifies me," she admitted, her patterns shifting to deep purple. "And it excites me. For the first time in our empire's history, we must earn the loyalty of our subjects rather than simply demanding it. It's forcing us to become better." "Better how?" Princess Zaratil was quiet for a long moment, her patterns cycling through colors that Marcus didn't yet understand. "My mother told me about the Kithara Consortium War, how humanity defeated them and then helped them rebuild. In our empire, defeated enemies become slaves or are eliminated entirely. We never considered that they might become allies. It's not always easy, Marcus said. There are humans who argue that we're too trusting, too willing to forgive. But we found that people usually live up to the expectations you set for them, even when those expectations seem impossible. Especially then, she turned to face him fully, all four of her eyes focused on his face. Marcus Chun, I must confess something to you. When my mother first told me of this marriage alliance, I was furious. I believed that humans were primitive creatures who had gotten lucky in a single battle and were now demanding respect they hadn't earned. And now I begin to suspect that we are the primitive ones. Not in technology, but in wisdom. You speak of friendship and cooperation as if they're natural forces, while we have spent millennia perfecting the arts of conquest and domination. A chime echoed across the balcony, signaling the approach of evening. As the twin suns began to set, the city below them transformed. The bioluminescent patterns on every building began to pulse in synchronization, creating a symphony of light that washed over them in waves. This is called the evening harmony, Zaratil explained. Every night, our entire city joins together in this display. It's been a tradition for over 1,000 years. Marcus watched in awe as patterns flowed through the city like visible music. It's incredible. We have nothing like this on Earth. What do humans do when the day ends? Well, we usually just turn on lights and keep working. Sometimes families gather for meals or entertainment, but nothing on this scale. Princess Zaratil's patterns shifted to what looked like contemplation. Perhaps that is something our peoples could share. We could teach you the harmony of light, and you could teach us the value of simple gatherings. I'd like that, Marcus said, and realized that he genuinely meant it. This alien princess was nothing like he had expected. She was intelligent, thoughtful, and seemed genuinely interested in understanding humanity rather than simply tolerating them for political advantage. Marcus Chun, she said as the light show reached its crescendo, would you be willing to tell me something about your world? Something that is not in the official reports. What would you like to know? What you miss most about Earth? Marcus thought for a moment, then smiled. The ocean at night. There's a beach near where I grew up where you can lie on the sand and watch the waves while the stars reflect on the water. It's completely quiet except for the sound of the surf, and it makes you feel like you're part of something much larger than yourself. That sounds peaceful. It is. When I was stressed or confused, I would go there to think. The rhythm of the waves seemed to put everything in perspective. Princess Zaratil was quiet for several minutes as the evening harmony gradually faded and normal city lighting resumed. Finally, she spoke. Tomorrow, would you like to see something similar here? We have crystal seas that sing when the moons rise. It's not the same as your ocean, but perhaps it might serve a similar purpose. I would like that very much, Your Highness. Please, she said, her pattern showing what might have been warmth. Call me Zara. If we were to be married in a few days, perhaps we should start with the basics of friendship. Zara, he repeated, testing the alien syllables. And I'm just Marcus. Marcus, she said, and somehow made his simple human name sound musical. As they made their way back through the palace corridors, Marcus found himself thinking that this marriage might not be the diplomatic burden he had expected. Princess Zaratil, Zara, was clearly intelligent and curious about humanity in ways that went beyond political necessity. Perhaps, he thought, this strange alliance between two impossible different species might actually have a chance of succeeding. And if it did, it might change both their worlds in ways that no one had yet imagined. The real test, however, would come tomorrow, when they would have their first truly private conversation without the formal protocols and cultural barriers that had shaped today's interaction. Tomorrow, he would discover whether the woman behind the royal title was someone he could genuinely care about, or whether the gulf between their species was simply too vast to bridge with anything as fragile as human emotion. But tonight, for the first time since agreeing to this arrangement, Marcus Chun felt something that surprised him. Hope. The crystal sea sang its ancient song as two moons cast silver light across waters that chimed like wind bells with each gentle wave. Zara led Marcus down a winding path carved from living coral, their footsteps creating soft harmonics that blended with the ocean's melody. She had changed from her formal court attire into something simpler, a flowing garment that moved like liquid starlight and left her bioluminescent patterns clearly visible. "This is the Singing Shore," she said as they reached a secluded beach where the sand was composed of tiny crystal fragments that sparkled like captured stars. "I come here when the court becomes too complicated." Marcus knelt and let the crystal sand run through his fingers. It was warm to the touch and created tiny chimes as it moved. "It's beautiful, and you're right about the similarity to Earth's beaches. There's the same sense of infinite space and time." "Tell me more about this beach you miss," Zara said, settling gracefully onto the sand with her legs folded beneath her. Her four eyes reflected the moonlight as she watched him with genuine curiosity. Marcus sat beside her, noting that she didn't seem bothered by his proximity. "It's called Moonrise Bay. My parents took me there as a child, and I kept going back as I got older. There's something about the rhythm of the waves that helps me think clearly." "What kind of thoughts?" "Everything, really. What I wanted to do with my life, what kind of person I wanted to become, how to solve problems that seemed impossible." He paused, looking out over the alien sea. "I went there the night before I volunteered for this marriage. I wanted to be sure I was making the right choice." Zara's patterns shifted to soft blue, what he was beginning to recognize as the color of curiosity. "And were you?" "Sure, I thought I was. Now I'm beginning to realize that I didn't really understand what I was volunteering for." "In what way?" Marcus turned to study her alien features, noting the subtle expressions that played across her face despite its fundamental difference from human features. "I expected to marry a princess, a political figure who would tolerate me for the sake of our alliance. I didn't expect to meet someone who would take me to her private sanctuary and ask what I missed about home." Zara's patterns flickered through several colors before settling on what looked like pink. Embarrassment, perhaps? "I'm still a princess, Marcus. This marriage is still a political necessity. I don't want you to develop false expectations. What if I told you that my expectations are changing anyway?" She was quiet for several minutes, her patterns cycling through deep purple and gold. The sea continued its crystalline song around them, and somewhere in the distance, creatures that looked like living jewels called to each other with voices like flutes. "Marcus," she finally said, "may I ask you something personal? Something that might help me understand your people better?" "Of course. What do humans do when they're afraid?" The question surprised him. "That depends on what we're afraid of and what kind of person we are. Some humans run away, some fight, some try to find clever solutions." "Why do you ask?" "Because I am afraid," she admitted, her patterns now showing deep purple shot through with silver. "I have been afraid since my mother first told me about this marriage. I am afraid of marrying someone I cannot understand, afraid of failing my people, afraid of the changes that are coming to our empire whether we accept them or not." Marcus felt a sudden surge of sympathy for this alien princess who seemed as lost as he felt. "What would help you feel less afraid?" "I don't know. Perhaps understanding you better. Learning whether the things our intelligence services report about humanity are true, or whether they are myths created by fear and misunderstanding." "What kind of things do they report?" Zara hesitated, her patterns shifting to colors that suggested internal conflict. "They say that humans are unpredictable, that you can be peaceful and cooperative one moment, then utterly ruthless the next. They say you form emotional bonds that can overcome logical self-interest, but that you also have a capacity for cruelty that exceeds even our most aggressive species." "All of that is probably true," Marcus said quietly. "We are contradictory. We're capable of great kindness and great cruelty, sometimes within the same individual. We can be logical and emotional, peaceful and violent, selfish and self-sacrificing. How do you live with such contradictions?" "By trying to choose which aspects of our nature to cultivate. We're not bound by instinct the way some species are. We get to decide, moment by moment, what kind of people we want to be." Zara drew patterns in the crystal sand with one of her delicate fingers, the fragments chiming softly as they moved. Our people are taught that such inconsistency is a weakness. We value harmony, predictability, order. And yet you brought me to this beach, Marcus pointed out. That doesn't seem like the action of someone who always follows predictable patterns. Her patterns flickered with what might have been amusement. Perhaps I am more human than I care to admit. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sea's song and watching the interplay of moonlight on the crystalline waves. Marcus found himself studying Zara's profile, noting the elegant curves of her alien features and the way her patterns seemed to reflect her emotional state like a living mood ring. "Marcus," she said suddenly, "would you tell me about your family? I know about your great-grandmother's political significance, but what are they like as people?" "They're normal, mostly. My parents are both teachers. My father specializes in xenobiology, and my mother teaches literature. They met during the first cultural exchange programs with the Centauran colonies. My grandmother, Sarah, raised me for several years when my parents were working off-world." "What did she teach you?" Marcus smiled at the memory. "How to think for myself. How to question authority without being disrespectful. How to find common ground with people who seemed completely different from me. And how to make apple pie." "Apple pie? It's a human food. Sweet fruit baked in pastry." She said that cooking for people was a way of showing them you cared about their happiness. Zara's patterns brightened with interest. "Food as an expression of emotion? That's fascinating. Our cuisine is primarily nutritional. We rarely consider the emotional aspects of eating. Would you like me to show you? I brought ingredients for several human dishes. The diplomatic mission includes a full cultural exchange, after all." "I would like that very much," she said, and her pattern showed what looked like genuine enthusiasm. "But first, tell me more about your grandmother. She sounds remarkable." She's 93 years old and still sharper than most people half her age. She taught me that the most important thing in any relationship, whether it's between individuals or between species, is to see the person behind the differences." "What do you mean?" Marcus turned to face her directly. "Right now, you're afraid of marrying a human. But I'm not really a human in the abstract sense. I'm Marcus, a specific individual with specific thoughts and feelings and quirks. And you're not just a Velnari princess. You're Zara, someone who comes to crystal beaches when she needs to think and who's brave enough to ask difficult questions." Zara's patterns went through a complex series of changes, settling finally on warm gold. "Your grandmother sounds very wise. She also told me something specific about this marriage that I think you should know." "What?" "She said that you would probably be more afraid of this union than I was, because humans are used to uncertainty while your people value stability. She suggested that the best thing I could do would be to show you that I'm predictable in the ways that matter." "And what ways are those?" Marcus met her alien eyes steadily. "I won't lie to you. I won't try to change you into something you're not. I won't use this marriage to hurt your people or advance human interests at their expense. And I'll try my best to be someone you can trust, even if we never become more than partners in a political alliance." Zara was quiet for a long time, her patterns cycling through deep blues and purples. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he had heard it before. "Marcus, may I tell you something that I have never told anyone else? If you want to. I used to dream about the stars when I was young. Not about conquering them or ruling them, but about visiting them. I wanted to see what other worlds looked like, to meet other species as equals rather than subjects. My tutors told me such dreams were foolish, that a princess's duty was to her own people, not to strangers among the stars. What changed? Humanity happened. When your people first made contact with other species, you didn't try to conquer them. You tried to understand them. And somehow, that approach proved more powerful than our centuries of military might." She stood and walked to the water's edge, letting the crystalline waves lap at her feet. "I have studied every report about human exploration and diplomacy. In every case, you find ways to build bridges instead of walls. You turn enemies into allies, strangers into friends. It seems like magic to someone raised in our empire. Marcus joined her at the water's edge. It's not magic. It's just a choice we make. We decided a long time ago that the universe was big enough for everyone, and that we'd rather have friends and subjects. But how do you know when someone can be trusted? How do you know when friendship is genuine rather than a tactical deception? You don't always. Sometimes we get hurt because we trust too easily. But we found that most people want the same basic things: safety, happiness, a chance to build something meaningful with their lives. If you approach others assuming they want the same things you do, you're usually right. And if you're wrong, then you deal with the consequences and try to be smarter next time. But you don't stop trusting altogether. Zara bent and picked up one of the glowing creatures that washed ashore with each wave, something like a cross between a jellyfish and a flower that pulsed with soft light. She held it carefully in her palm as it sang a tiny melody. "These are called memory singers," she said. "They store sound vibrations in their crystalline structures and replay them when touched. This one has probably heard conversations from dozens of visitors to this beach." She touched the creature gently, and it began to sing, not its own voice, but fragments of conversations in a dozen languages. Human voices, Velnari harmonics, the clicking languages of the Kythex, and the musical tones of the Hartova. "Everyone comes here to talk," Zara continued. "Diplomats working through difficult negotiations, couples resolving arguments, individuals trying to make sense of their lives. The memory singers collect all of it. What do they do with all those voices? Listen to them." She returned the creature to the water, where it joined a chorus of its fellows. They don't judge or analyze or try to solve the problems they hear about. They just listen and remember. Marcus understood the implicit message. "Is that what you need from me right now? Just listening?" "Perhaps." Her patterns shifted to soft pink again. "Marcus, I need to tell you something about our wedding ceremony. It involves a ritual called the joining of lights, where both partners must synchronize their bioluminescent patterns. It's supposed to symbolize emotional and spiritual unity. I don't have bioluminescent patterns." "I know. The court scientists have been working on a solution, a biointerface that would allow your nervous system to control light patterns woven into your ceremonial clothing. But it would require a direct neural link, and it would give you access to my emotional state in ways that might be intimate." Marcus felt a chill of understanding. "You're worried about what I might learn about you." "I'm worried about what you might think of me once you can sense my true feelings instead of just the patterns I choose to show." They stood in silence for several minutes, the memory singers providing a soundtrack of whispered conversations in languages neither of them fully understood. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Zara, can I tell you what scares me most about this marriage? Please. I'm afraid that you'll never be able to see me as anything more than a political necessity. That no matter how much we talk or how well we get along, there will always be a part of you that sees me as the alien intruder who was forced into your life." Her patterns shifted to deep blue. "And I'm afraid that once you can sense my emotions directly, you'll realize how unprepared I am for this responsibility, how uncertain I feel about everything, how often I doubt myself and my decisions. Then we're both afraid of being judged," Marcus said. "Maybe that's actually a good starting point." "How do you mean?" "My grandmother used to say that the best relationships are between people who are brave enough to be vulnerable with each other. If we both know we're going into this feeling uncertain and afraid, maybe we can help each other through it." Zara's patterns brightened slightly. "You would not be disappointed to discover that your alien princess is just as confused and frightened as anyone else." "I would be relieved," Marcus said honestly. "Perfect people are intimidating. Confused and frightened people are human. Or, well, relatable, anyway." For the first time since they had met, Zara laughed, a sound like crystal bells mixed with music. "I think I am beginning to understand why other species choose to ally with humanity rather than fight you." "Oh, why is that?" "Because you have a talent for making people feel less alone in the universe. They walked back up the beach as the moon set, and the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky. The crystal sand chimed a gentle farewell under their feet, and the memory singers continued their eternal chorus of collected voices. "Marcus," Zara said as they reached the path back to the palace, "tomorrow we begin the formal pre-wedding ceremonies. They will be intense. Our entire court will be watching to see how we interact, how well we understand each other's customs, how convincing our alliance appears. Are you worried about how I'll perform? I'm worried about how we'll perform together. But after tonight, I think we might actually have a chance of making this work." "Just tonight? What changed?" Zara's patterns shifted to warm gold as she considered her answer. "You listened to my fears without trying to fix them or dismiss them. You shared your own uncertainties without trying to appear stronger than you feel. And you made me laugh. That's enough to build a marriage on. It's enough to build a friendship on. And perhaps, given time, friendship might become something more." As they entered the palace, Marcus found himself thinking that this alien princess was full of surprises. She was nothing like the formal, distant figure he had expected to marry. Instead, she was thoughtful, honest, and surprisingly funny when she let her guard down. More importantly, she seemed willing to take the risk of getting to know him as an individual rather than just as a representative of humanity. If they could maintain this level of openness and honesty through the upcoming ceremonies, they might actually have a chance of creating something real together. The question was whether they would be able to maintain their fragile connection under the pressure of court politics and the expectations of two entire species. Tomorrow would begin the real test of whether a human and a Velnari could build a relationship that was both politically successful and personally meaningful. But for tonight, Marcus was content to have made a friend. Everything else could wait until morning. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Velnari Imperial Palace had never hosted an event quite like this. Representatives from 47 different species filled the crystalline amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of sounds, colors, and energy patterns that would have been overwhelming to anyone not accustomed to galactic diplomacy. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood in the human delegation section, watching her great-grandson with the proud satisfaction of someone who had lived to see her wildest dreams exceeded. "The harmony of preparation will now begin," announced the Herald of Ceremonies, her voice carrying across the vast space in both audible sound and harmonic resonance. "Let all witness the unity of the Velnari Empire and the human commonwealth as they join in common purpose." Marcus stood at the center of the ceremonial circle, wearing robes that had been specially crafted by master artisans from both civilizations. The fabric was human silk interwoven with Velnari light threads, creating patterns that shifted and flowed in response to his movements and emotional state. Beside him, Zara wore traditional royal wedding attire that made her look like a living constellation, her natural bioluminescence enhanced by ceremonial jewelry that amplified and directed her patterns into complex geometric designs. "The first challenge," the herald continued, "is the test of understanding. Each partner must demonstrate knowledge of the other's culture, history, and values. Princess Zaratiel will speak first." Zara stepped forward, her patterns shifting to the formal gold and blue of ceremonial address. But when she spoke, her words carried a warmth that surprised many in the audience. "I stand before you having learned that humanity is not what our histories taught us to expect. They're not conquerors seeking dominance, nor are they weaklings to be easily controlled. They are something far more dangerous to our old ways of thinking. They are teachers." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. This was not the formal recitation of cultural facts that tradition demanded. "In the past weeks, Marcus Chun has taught me that strength can be gentle, that power can be shared rather than hoarded, and that the greatest victory is often to transform an enemy into a friend. He has shown me human music, which speaks directly to emotions in ways our harmonics cannot match. He has shared human food, which is prepared not just for nutrition, but as an expression of care and creativity. Zara turned to look directly at Marcus, her patterns brightening. But most importantly, he has taught me that marriage, even one born of political necessity, can become something precious if both partners choose to see each other as individuals rather than representatives of their species. The audience was silent, hanging on her words. Even the usually impassive Velnari nobles seemed affected by the genuine emotion in her voice. Humans have a saying, Zara continued. The best way to make peace is to make friends. Today, I stand before you not just as a princess fulfilling her duty, but as someone who has chosen to embrace the possibility of friendship, understanding, and perhaps even love with a remarkable man who happens to be human. When she finished, the response from the assembly was unlike anything in Velnari ceremonial history. Instead of the polite harmonic acknowledgement that tradition demanded, delegates from dozens of species began their own forms of applause, a thunderous mixture of sounds, colors, and energy that spoke of genuine approval. Marcus stepped forward for his turn, his bioresponsive clothing beginning to glow with soft patterns as his emotional state influenced the embedded light threads. Your Highness, honored delegates, friend from across the galaxy, he began. A few weeks ago, I thought I understood what I was volunteering for. I expected to marry a princess, someone distant and formal, bound by duty and tradition. I thought our marriage would be a political arrangement that we would both endure for the good of our peoples. His clothing brightened as his sincerity triggered the light threads. But Princess Zaratiel has taught me that understanding another person requires more than studying their species' customs and history. It requires the courage to be vulnerable, to share fears as well as hopes, to see beyond the surface differences to the person beneath. Marcus turned to face Zara, his patterns now synchronizing unconsciously with hers, something that should have been impossible without the neural interface that was planned for the actual ceremony. She has shown me Velnari art that tells stories in ways human literature never could. She has shared music that resonates in frequencies our instruments cannot produce. She has taken me to places of beauty that exist nowhere in human space. The synchronization between their light patterns was becoming more pronounced, drawing surprised murmurs from the Velnari scientists in the audience. According to their theories, such harmony should have required direct neural connection. But more than that, Marcus continued, she has shown me that two people from completely different worlds can find common ground in their hopes, their fears, and their dreams. She has taught me that love, real love, is not about finding someone just like yourself, but about choosing to build something beautiful with someone who sees the universe differently than you do. By the time he finished, his clothing was blazing with patterns that perfectly complemented Zara's natural bioluminescence. The effect was so striking that several delegates were recording the event for posterity. The second challenge, the herald announced after the assembly had quieted, is the test of unity. Both partners must demonstrate their ability to work together to solve a problem that neither could handle alone. A complex, three-dimensional puzzle materialized in the air between them. A crystalline structure that rotated slowly, its faceted surfaces showing mathematical equations, star charts, musical notation, and other symbols from dozens of different civilizations. This is the harmony lock, the herald explained. It can only be opened through the combined application of logic and intuition, calculation and creativity, individual strength, and cooperative trust. You have 1 hour. Marcus and Zara approached the puzzle together, their enhanced clothing creating an aura of light around them as they studied the rotating structure. Almost immediately, they began to work with a synchronization that surprised everyone present, including themselves. The mathematical sequences here follow Velnari geometric principles, Zara observed, pointing to one section of the puzzle. But they're incomplete, Marcus added. The missing elements follow patterns I recognize from human music theory. If we combine your mathematical sequences with human harmonic ratios, they work together, each contributing their species' unique perspective to the complex problem. Marcus's intuitive approach to pattern recognition complemented Zara's logical analysis. Her ability to visualize complex geometric relationships helped him understand structures that would have baffled human mathematicians. There, Zara said suddenly, her patterns flashing with excitement. If we input the combined sequence simultaneously, they reached toward the puzzle together, their hands meeting as they touched different points on the structure. The moment their skin made contact, something unexpected happened. The bioresponsive threads in Marcus's clothing suddenly connected with Zara's natural bioluminescence, creating a feedback loop that amplified both their patterns. For an instant, they could sense each other's emotions directly, Zara's excitement and growing affection, Marcus's wonder and deepening respect, and beneath it all, a shared sense of rightness about what they were building together. The puzzle burst into brilliant light and began to unfold, its crystalline segments rearranging themselves into an intricate sculpture that depicted two figures dancing together among the stars. The assembly erupted in genuine celebration. What they had just witnessed went far beyond the completion of a ceremonial challenge. The spontaneous neural connection, the perfect synchronization of their efforts, and the obvious emotional resonance between the two young people suggested that this marriage might become something historically significant. Queen Mother Wycesindra leaned toward Ambassador Sarah Chun. "Your great-grandson is remarkable," she said, her patterns showing deep approval. "He has accomplished in weeks what our best diplomats could not achieve in decades." "He's accomplished something more important than diplomacy," Sarah replied with a smile. "He's made my great-granddaughter fall in love with him." "Your great-granddaughter?" "Any woman who looks at a man the way Zara looks at Marcus is family, as far as I'm concerned. Species is irrelevant." As the formal challenges concluded and the assembly began to disperse for the evening feast, Marcus and Zara found themselves alone for a few moments in a side chamber adjacent to the main hall. The bioresponsive clothing had returned to a soft glow, but they could still sense an echo of the connection they had shared. "That was unexpected," Zara said, her patterns shifting through several colors before settling on a warm pink. "The puzzle, or the connection?" Marcus asked. "Both. According to our scientists, direct emotional resonance between our species should be impossible without extensive technological interface. Maybe our scientists don't know everything about how people connect with each other." Zara moved closer to him, her four eyes studying his face with an intensity that made him slightly nervous. "Marcus, when we touched during the puzzle, I could sense your emotions. What I felt from you was..." "What?" "Genuine affection. Not duty, not political calculation, but real caring. For me, personally." Marcus reached out to touch one of her hands, noting how naturally their fingers intertwined despite the differences in anatomy. "Is that surprising?" "Terrifying," she admitted, "because I realized that what you were sensing from me was the same thing. And that terrifies you because it changes everything. This marriage was supposed to be a political arrangement that we would make the best of. Now it feels like it might become something real, something precious. And precious things can be lost." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "They can also be protected and cherished and allowed to grow into something even more beautiful. Is that what you want? For this to become something real?" "I want whatever you want, Zara. If you need this to remain a political arrangement, I'll respect that. But if you're willing to take the risk of letting it become something more..." "I am," she said quickly, then laughed at her own eagerness. "I am terrified of it, but I am willing to try. Then we're both taking the same risk." "That seems fair." They stood together in comfortable silence, their connection deeper now than it had been even the night before at the Crystal Sea. Tomorrow would bring the final ceremony, their actual wedding, but tonight they had crossed a threshold that was perhaps more significant than any formal ritual. "Marcus," Zara said softly, "there's one more tradition I would like to share with you before tomorrow's ceremony." "What is it?" "The Velnari have a custom called the Night of Promises, where couples spend the evening before their wedding making private vows to each other. Promises that are meant only for them, not for the political alliance or the public ceremony." What kind of promises? Whatever matters most to them. Some promise to be faithful, others to be honest, still others to support each other's dreams, even when they conflict with duty. Marcus considered this. What promise do you want to make to me? Zara's patterns shifted to deep gold as she thought. I promise to see you as Marcus, not as the human. To value your thoughts and feelings as much as I value political considerations. And to be brave enough to let you know the real me, not just the princess everyone expects me to be. Then, I promise to see you as Zara, not as the alien princess. To respect your culture and your people while never expecting you to be anything other than yourself. And to be patient while we figure out what we can build together. Are those sufficient promises for now? They're perfect for now. We can always make more as we go along. As they prepared to rejoin the evening festivities, both of them felt a sense of anticipation rather than dread about the coming ceremony. What had begun as a diplomatic necessity was becoming a personal choice, and that transformation was changing not just their individual futures, but the relationship between their peoples. Tomorrow, they would be married in front of representatives from across the galaxy. But tonight, they had made promises to each other that mattered more than any public ceremony ever could. The night before their wedding, Princess Zeratil of the Velnari Empire and Marcus Chun of humanity discovered that the greatest diplomatic achievement of their lives might turn out to be learning to love each other. The wedding morning began with the sound of crystal chimes echoing across the capital city of Velnara, their harmonics carrying news of the historic ceremony to every corner of the planet. In the royal preparation chambers, Zara stood surrounded by attendants who had been her companions since childhood, their patterns reflecting a mixture of excitement and nervousness that mirrored her own emotions. "Your Highness," said Melandra, her oldest friend and chief attendant, "the neural interface has been calibrated and tested. Are you certain you wish to proceed with the full joining of lights ceremony?" Zara looked at herself in the reflective crystal that served as a mirror. Her ceremonial attire was a masterpiece of Velnari craftsmanship. Flowing garments that seemed to be woven from captured starlight, jewelry that enhanced her natural bioluminescence, and a crown that had been worn by Velnari royalty for over 1,000 years. "I'm certain," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Marcus and I have already begun to connect naturally. The neural interface will simply formalize what has already started to happen between us." "But, Your Highness," another attendant protested, "no Velnari has ever attempted such intimate mental contact with an alien species. We don't know what the long-term effects might be." "Then, we'll discover them together," Zara replied, her patterns shifting to the confident gold of royal authority. Sometimes the most important discoveries can only be made by taking risks that seem impossible. Meanwhile, in the human diplomatic quarters, Marcus was receiving similar warnings from his own advisors. Ambassador Sarah Chun sat in the corner of the preparation room, watching her great-grandson with the calm confidence of someone who had survived multiple historical crises. "The Velnari scientists want one final meeting to discuss the neural interface," said Dr. Reynolds, the mission's chief medical officer. "They're concerned about potential psychological effects of direct emotional connection with a non-human consciousness." "I appreciate their concern," Marcus said as he adjusted the ceremonial collar that would house the biointerface components, "but Zara and I have already made our decision. We're going through with the full ceremony." "Marcus," Sarah interrupted gently, "are you doing this because you think it's politically necessary, or because you genuinely want this connection with her?" Marcus turned to face his great-grandmother, noting the sharp intelligence in her elderly eyes. "Honestly, both. I think the political symbolism is important for our peoples, but I care about her grandma, more than I expected to when this all started." "Good," Sarah said with satisfaction. "Political marriages can serve their purpose, but they work best when there's real affection underneath the diplomacy." "Are you nervous?" Dr. Reynolds asked. "Terrified," Marcus admitted, "but not about the ceremony. I'm afraid of disappointing her, of not being worthy of the trust she's placing in me." Then, you're exactly the right person for this job, Sarah said firmly. Only a fool would approach marriage to an alien princess without some healthy fear. The ceremony itself was held in the Crystal Cathedral, a vast transparent dome that rose from the heart of the palace like a frozen soap bubble. Sunlight streamed through its crystalline walls, breaking into rainbow patterns that danced across the assembled guests. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the space. Military officers, diplomats, scientists, and cultural observers all gathered to witness what many considered the most significant interspecies union in galactic history. As the processional music began, a complex harmony that blended human orchestral instruments with Velnari crystal resonators, Marcus took his place at the ceremonial platform. His formal attire incorporated traditional elements from both cultures. Human formal were augmented with bioresponsive threads that would synchronize with Zara's patterns during the ceremony. When Zara appeared at the far end of the cathedral, walking slowly down the crystalline aisle with Queen Mother Wysisindra at her side, Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She moved like living music, her ceremonial robes flowing around her in patterns that seemed to defy gravity. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed with soft rhythm that gradually synchronized with the ceremonial music, creating a visual symphony that left the entire assembly spellbound. But what struck Marcus most powerfully was not her alien beauty or royal majesty. It was the expression in her four eyes as they met his across the vast space. Despite the formal setting and the watching crowd, she looked at him with the same warmth and affection that she had shown during their private conversations. This was not just a princess fulfilling her duty. This was Zara, choosing to bind her life to his. Citizens of the galaxy, announced the High Celebrant, an ancient Velnari whose patterns glowed with the deep wisdom of centuries. We gather today to witness the joining of two souls, two peoples, two civilizations in the bonds of unity and mutual respect. The ceremony began with traditional elements from both cultures. Human vows were exchanged in clear, direct language that emphasized choice and commitment. Velnari harmonics filled the space with resonances that spoke to emotional truths deeper than words. Marcus and Zara each contributed elements that honored their respective heritages while creating something entirely new. And now, the High Celebrant announced, we come to the joining of lights, where two separate beings choose to share their innermost selves in the sacred bond of true partnership. Technical attendants stepped forward with a neural interface equipment, delicate circuitry that would create a temporary bridge between Marcus's nervous system and Zara's natural bioelectric patterns. As the devices were fitted to both of them, Marcus felt a moment of panic. What if the connection revealed that their affection was based on misunderstanding? What if their minds were simply too different to truly connect? Are you ready? The High Celebrant asked. Marcus looked at Zara, seeing his own nervousness reflected in her shifting patterns. But underneath the fear, he saw determination and trust that gave him courage. We're ready, they said in unison. The interface activated, and suddenly, Marcus's consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of his own skull. He could sense Zara's emotions as clearly as his own, her excitement, her love, her hope for their future together. But more than that, he could perceive the shape of her thoughts, the way her mind processed information through patterns of light and harmony that were utterly alien, yet somehow beautiful. Through the connection, he felt her surprise and delight as she experienced human emotional processing. The way his thoughts moved in linear sequences punctuated by bursts of intuitive leaps, the intensity of single-focused attention that was so different from her species' natural multi-threaded awareness. Their bioresponsive clothing began to glow, patterns of light flowing between them in complex spirals that reflected their deepening mental connection. The assembled crowd watched in awed silence as the two young people stood bathed in synchronized illumination that spoke of a bond deeper than any mere political alliance. Through the neural link, Marcus experienced Zara's memories, her childhood in the palace gardens, her education in statecraft and warfare, her dreams of traveling among the stars, her initial fear and anger about their arranged marriage, and her growing wonder as she came to know him as an individual. In return, she experienced his memories, his quiet childhood on Earth, his grandmother's wisdom, his decision to volunteer for this marriage, his first sight of her world, and his amazement at discovering that love could grow even between beings as different as themselves. Do you, Princess Zeratil of the Velnari, choose to bind your life and future to Marcus Chun of humanity? The High Celebrant asked. Through the neural connection, Marcus felt her answer even before she spoke it aloud. Her love for him flowed through the link like liquid starlight, warm and bright and utterly genuine. I do choose this bond, she said, her voice carrying harmonics of absolute certainty. Not from duty, but from love. Not as a princess, but as a woman who has found her partner among the stars. Do you, Marcus Chun of humanity, choose to bind your life and future to Princess Zeratil of the Velnari? Marcus felt his own emotions amplified through their connection, his love for her, his respect for her intelligence and courage, his excitement about building a future together, his determination to be worthy of her trust. I do choose this bond, he replied, his voice steady despite the overwhelming intensity of their shared consciousness. Not from obligation, but from choice. Not as a diplomat, but as a man who has found his home in the heart of an extraordinary woman. The light patterns flowing between them reached a crescendo, creating a pillar of harmonized illumination that rose toward the crystal ceiling. Every person in the cathedral could see the visual representation of their emotional and mental unity, a bond that transcended species and proved that connection was possible even across the vast differences between civilizations. Then, by the ancient laws of the Velnari Empire and the customs of the human commonwealth, you are joined as partners in life, in purpose, and in the great work of building bridges between the stars, the High Celebrant declared. The neural interface gradually powered down, returning them to their separate consciousness, but Marcus found that an echo of their connection remained. He could still sense Zara's emotional state, still feel the warmth of her affection, still perceive the shape of her thoughts in ways that would have been impossible before their joining. As the ceremony concluded and the guests began their celebration, Marcus and Zara found themselves in a moment of relative privacy on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Both of them were still glowing softly from the residual effects of their neural connection. "How do you feel?" Zara asked, her patterns reflecting curiosity mixed with contentment. "Different," Marcus admitted. "I can sense things about you that I never could before. It's like seeing color for the first time. I know what you mean. Your thought patterns are so focused, intense in ways that mine are not. It's fascinating." They stood together watching the city celebrate their union. Fireworks filled the sky, some traditional Velnari light sculptures, others human pyrotechnics, and many that combined elements from both cultures in new and beautiful ways. "Zura," Marcus said quietly, "do you regret it? The neural joining?" "No," she said immediately, then paused to consider more carefully. "It's overwhelming, being able to sense your emotions so directly, but it's also wonderful. I know now, beyond any doubt, that your feelings for me are genuine. And yours for me," Marcus replied, reaching for her hand. The moment their skin touched, the faint echo of their connection strengthened, allowing them to share emotions without words. "What happens now?" Zara asked. "We're married, our peoples are allied, and somehow we've managed to fall in love with each other. Where do we go from here?" Marcus smiled, looking out over the celebrating city, where humans and Velnari mingled freely for the first time in history. "We build something new, together." 3 months later, Princess Zura and Marcus Chun stood before the Galactic Council in the neutral space of Harmony Station. Around them, representatives from every major civilization in known space watched as they presented their proposal for a new form of interspecies cooperation. The traditional alliance model is based on mutual defense and trade agreements, Marcus explained to the assembly. What we're proposing goes deeper. Cultural exchange programs, joint exploration missions, shared scientific research, and integrated diplomatic corps that work to prevent conflicts before they begin. This partnership protocol, Zara added, her patterns bright with enthusiasm, would create voluntary networks of cooperation that don't require surrender of sovereignty or cultural identity. Each species contributes their unique strengths while maintaining their independence. The Zephyrian ambassador, a crystalline being whose thoughts manifested as musical tones, chimed a complex melody that the translation systems rendered as, "You speak of ideals." But what proof do you offer that such cooperation is possible between species as different as ourselves? Marcus and Zara exchanged a look, their residual neural connection allowing them to communicate silently before Zara stepped forward. "We offer ourselves as proof," she said simply. 6 months ago, our peoples were preparing for potential war. Today, we are partners in every sense of the word: personal, political, and practical. If a human and a Velnari can build a marriage that serves both their peoples, then any species can find common ground if they choose to look for it. But how do we know your success isn't simply an anomaly? Pressed the Kythex delegate, her chittering translated as skepticism. Two individuals may connect, but that doesn't mean their civilizations can do the same. Because, Marcus replied, we're not the only ones. In a month since our wedding, we've received thousands of applications from individuals across both our peoples who want to participate in extended cultural exchanges. Scientists want to collaborate on research projects. Artists want to explore hybrid forms of expression. Military officers want to train together to better protect civilian populations. Even our politicians are discovering that cooperation yields better results than competition. The assembly hall buzzed with translated discussions as representatives conferred among themselves. Finally, the ancient heart of a matriarch spoke, her thoughts manifesting as shifting geometric patterns in the air. The Hartova have observed the changes in both the Velnari Empire and the human commonwealth since your union, she said, her words carried by harmonic translation. Both civilizations have grown stronger through cooperation. Both have achieved technological and cultural advances that neither could have accomplished alone. If you can extend this model to include other species, that's exactly what we're proposing, Zara said eagerly. Not a replacement for existing alliance structures, but a supplement, a way for species to choose deeper cooperation based on mutual interest and respect rather than fear or necessity. The debate continued for hours, but by the end of the session, 37 species had expressed preliminary interest in the partnership protocol. It would take years to fully implement, but the foundation had been laid for a new era of galactic cooperation. That evening, as they returned to their quarters aboard Harmony Station, Marcus and Zara reflected on how far they had come from that first awkward meeting in the palace courtyard. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't taken the risk of the neural connection? Zara asked as they settled together on the observation deck, watching stars will slowly pass the station's transparent walls. Sometimes, Marcus admitted, but I think we would have found some way to connect. Maybe not as quickly or as deeply, but I think we were meant to find each other one way or another, even across all the differences between our species. Especially because of those differences, we complement each other in ways that neither of us could have expected. Zara's patterns shifted to warm gold as she considered this. Through their bond, Marcus could feel her contentment and love, but also her excitement about their future projects and challenges. Marcus, she said softly, I need to tell you something. What? I'm pregnant. Marcus felt his heart skip as the implications hit him. Through their neural connection, he could sense Zara's mixture of joy and nervousness about carrying the first human Velnari hybrid child. How do you feel about it? He asked carefully. Terrified, she admitted with a laugh. Our medical teams have no idea what to expect, but also excited. This child will be living proof that our species can build something beautiful together. A bridge between worlds, Marcus said, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. Literally. The first of many, I hope. Our success has inspired other interspecies couples to consider having children together. In a few generations, the galaxy might be full of people who belong to multiple species and think of the stars as their natural home. Marcus leaned back against the comfortable seating, pulling Zara close against his side. Through the observation deck's transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of different civilizations docked at the station, all of them working together on projects that would have been impossible just a year ago. When you first protested to your mother about marrying a human, he said with amusement, did you ever imagine it would lead to this? Never, Zara replied, her patterns bright with happiness. I thought humans were primitive barbarians who had gotten lucky in a single battle. I never dreamed that you would teach me to see the universe as a place of infinite possibility rather than endless conflict. And I never imagined that marrying an alien princess would teach me that love isn't just about finding someone like yourself. It's about choosing to build something new and beautiful with someone who sees the world completely differently than you do. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and feeling their child growing within Zara's body, a child who would be both human and Velnari, both earthbound and cosmic, both heir to ancient traditions and pioneer of unprecedented possibilities. In the distance, construction crews worked around the clock to build the first joint human-Velnari research station, where scientists from both species would collaborate on projects ranging from faster-than-light communication to terraforming technologies that could create garden worlds throughout the galaxy. What do you think our child will make of all this? Zara asked, following his gaze toward the construction site. I think they'll take it for granted, Marcus replied with a smile. To them, cooperation between species won't be a miraculous achievement. It'll just be the way the universe works. Is that good or bad? It's perfect. It means we've succeeded in building something so fundamentally right that the next generation will wonder why anyone ever thought it was impossible. As they prepared to return to their quarters, both of them felt a deep sense of satisfaction about the choices they had made. What had begun as a political marriage born of necessity had become a love story that was reshaping the galaxy. More than that, it had become proof that the greatest achievements were possible when people chose to see differences as opportunities rather than obstacles. The child growing within Zara would be the first of a new generation, children who belonged to multiple worlds and thought of the entire galaxy as their home. And watching over them all would be the example of a human and a Velnari who had proven that love could bridge any gap, overcome any difference, and build bridges between the stars themselves. Marcus Chun had volunteered to marry an alien princess for the sake of political alliance. Instead, he had discovered that the most important diplomatic achievement of his life would be learning to love someone who saw the universe through completely different eyes. And in doing so, he and Zara had shown two civilizations, and eventually the entire galaxy, that the future belonged to those brave enough to build it together. The stars wheeled overhead, silent witnesses to a love story that would echo through the generations and prove that the greatest adventures were not about conquering distant worlds, but about learning to call them home.